The lights just flickered. Debbie is not here yet, so give us a few more minutes and then we'll get started.
Is Debbie there?
Not yet.
Okay.
Here she comes. Catch your breath. He's on. Diane's on. Okay, good morning. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. If you have a cell phone, and please, if you could turn it down, I'd greatly appreciate that. People on Zoom, some of you need to stay muted, please, through the presentation. And we'll have questions and answers at the end that we'll ask and see our speaker. Debbie is here, and she is going to introduce our presenter for today.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you back again, and everyone on Zoom, including Neill. Neill Hollenshead is our presenter this morning. Neill and his wife, Carol, moved into Okamic in March of 2023, along with their yellow lab, Dixie. Neill and Carol have 2 sons, Ben and Sam, and 4 grandsons. Neill lists his credentials as Juris Doctor and Army. His careers, plural, have included legal information and analysis, healthcare and information and analysis, and sales, marketing and analysis, and business development. He's also been a volunteer for the Labrador Retriever Rescue. Places he's lived include Chicago, Windsor, Ontario, Michigan, Charlottesville, Virginia, Oakland, California, Marana, Arizona, and Gainesville. They're currently summering in O'Train, Michigan, which I don't know where that is, but I'm sure it's lovely. His interests include art galleries, astronomy, bicycling, bird watching, boating, and dance. Their travels have been extensive to the U.S. Western parks, Italy, Greece, Hawaii, an African safari, Egypt, sailing in the British Virgin Islands, Bali, Australia, New Zealand, and diving in the Pacific. Whew, no wonder Neill shares some words. No wonder. Neill shares some words to live by. Do it now. You only live once. His presentation today is titled, Can a Water-Loving Wolverine Become a Gator? We hope so, Neill. And he added, by way of introduction to his video, I found my adventures in living to be personally worthwhile, but quite challenging. My mother saved a memory box with old photos and other family memorabilia, and I had previously procrastinated going through it. Now that I'm old, with increasing sense of mortality, this project forced me to digitize the photos and organize the information. It also forced me to contemplate where my 79 years went, who I am, and what memories, experiences, and relationships have been important. So with that great introduction, let's turn it over to Neill.
Morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Neill Hollenshead. I'm a resident at the Okamic at the University of Florida, and today we'll be talking about my adventures in living. I should mention at the outset that this is my story. It's not my wife's story. She's very possessive about her story. So you will be introduced to her, but it's my story and focused more on me. So perhaps someday she'll share her adventures in living. This talk was entitled, Can a Water-Loving Wolverine Become a Gator? And I'm a University of Michigan grad. My wife is, my son, many members of our family. But we've moved here to Gainesville, and I've had a chance to participate in some of the activities of the University of Florida, basketball, women's gymnastics, other activities, and it's been really pleasurable. But the question is, and they're similar universities in many respects. They're about the same size. They're world-renowned. And, Wolverine's noted for being aggressive, territorial, and fearless. And the Gators, well, they got armored bodies, short legs, and muscular tails. So I'll reserve that question until later on in the discussion. So here we see someone else who had the question of could they be a Wolverine or a Gator. This is Dr. Ono, who is in the front running for the president of the University of Florida. And here's some Gators. And in case you didn't know what a Wolverine looked like, there it is. So as I mentioned, I've been a University of Michigan Wolverine for some time. This is the championship of the women's gymnastics back a few years ago. And we have a tendency to wear shirts that say, just beat Ohio State, things like that. Let me give you a little summary about my situation, my life, before we go into some of the details. I'm a boomer. I was born in 1946 in Chicago. I have a brother 6 years older, a sister who's now passed, who was 3 years younger. I've lived in Chicago, Colchester, Ontario, Windsor, Ontario, Port Huron, Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Charlottesville, Virginia, Oakland, California, Gregory, Michigan, and Marana, Arizona, and Gainesville. So lived around the country and had a chance to experience things from a variety of different perspectives. As I mentioned, I'm a University of Michigan graduate. I got my BA in '67 and a JD in 1970. I've been married 55 years. I've got 2 sons and 4 grandsons. I retired in 2013 from careers in legal and healthcare information, and I've traveled to all 50 states, 6 Canadian provinces, and all the continents except Antarctica. So travel has been an important part of my life in exploring the rest of the world. Here are my ancestors. My great-grandfather and my great-grandmother, and I'll show you some pictures. I would note that my grandfather on my father's side and his wife, Althea, that's how I got my first name. It's really my grandmother's maiden name, Neill, and so, that's close to me. It was given to one of her sons, and also my firstborn son has it as a middle name. You'll notice too that Harry Milburn, my grandfather on my father's side, on my mother's side, excuse me, his name is Harry, and I got his name as a middle name. So it's Neill, Harry Hollenshead, and Neill has 2 L's. And then finally, my parents, Earl and Marguerite. So here's my great-grandfather and great-grandmother, and a photo on the right of the family Bible that provides some of the detail as to who they were and who some of the other people in my ancestry were. These are my grandparents. On the left is on the Hollenshead side, Althea and Henry Hugh, and on the right side, Harry and Minnie Milburn. And finally, my parents, Earl and Marguerite Hollenshead. My mother was a Milburn until she took that name. So on the Hollenshead side, Hollenshead's Chronicles was a historical source used by Shakespeare. And I like to think that I can perhaps someday trace my ancestry back to him. And so it would go back a ways. It's spelled a little bit differently, but I've seen it in terms of a variety of different spelling around the country. We spell it Hollenshead. My grandfather was one of 10 children. My grandmother was one of 8 children. And so they lived in Chanute, Kansas, which is in the southeast corner of Kansas. My grandfather owned a gas station. And my father was one of 4 males. We seem to be pretty stuck on that in that he had 3 brothers. I've got 2 sons, and each of them has 2 sons. My grandfather died at 89 mowing the grass with a push mower, so I hope that I have his genetics and not some of the other folks. My grandmother probably had Parkinson's, Althea. So here they are. This is my grandmother's family up in the left-hand corner. There's 7 there. One of her siblings died. And then the gas station is down on the left. And that's my grandfather when he was a small child in their house in Chanute, Kansas. Here's my grandfather on the left with 2 of his sisters, my father and brother Cecil, and then my father on the right-hand side with he and his parents. My uncle Neill, who I was to some extent named after, is on the lower left, and then the 4 brothers there on the bottom right. On the Milburn side, my grandfather traced his family back to an English Lord Melbourne. I don't have all of those details, unfortunately, but he told me that when I was young, and I remembered that. My grandfather and grandmother were involved with the Masonic Order of the Eastern Star and the White Shrine. So they were Freemasons and involved in that activity. My grandfather was in the hardware business. And importantly, I have a cousin who is the daughter of my Aunt Dolores, my mother's sister, and she was quite close to us. She was 3 years older than me, and my brother was 6 years older. So she was right in between, and as a result, we traveled frequently to see the Milburns in Indianapolis from where we were, and so she became, to some extent, part of our family. So here's my grandfather on my mother's side, Harry, and I especially like this picture down in the right-hand corner with my grandfather, grandmother. On the left is my Uncle Bob and my Aunt Dolores, and then my mother is the youngest one there, the baby. And here they are again, up in the left-hand corner. Bottom right, that's my Aunt Dolores and Uncle Bob. So here's my mother with some other pictures on the top part, and my Aunt Dolores and my cousin Judy in the lower left, and also the upper right when she was a small child, and then my grandparents later on. In an article about their involvement in the Masonic Order, and the Masonic Temple activity. So my mother and father, my father was, when he was in high school, president of the Aviation Club in high school. And that was an activity that was sort of new and blossoming. Aviation was, to some extent, the hot new thing. And I think he was quite interested in that, although he never became a pilot. I think he enjoyed thinking about flying and doing things like that. My father worked for my grandfather, Harry Milburn, and was taken home one night for dinner and met my mother. So they, not too long after that, got married. The Milburn family lived in Sioux City, Iowa, and then Webster Groves, Missouri. It was Webster Groves where they were living when my father met my mother. They were married at ages 27 and 21. He was a history buff in addition to having an interest in aviation. My mother died of a heart attack at 63, and my father died when he was 75. of lung cancer. Both my mother and father smoked and drank, and were part of that generation, and so for them, I think it caught up with them. Here's my mother in the upper left. I'll talk a little later about the fact that we've always had dogs, and dogs have been an important part of our family. And so this was Fang when she was younger. That's my father in the upper middle portion. I like that picture a lot. And it looks like they were having a good time later on at some resort with a big lake. My father had a very nice picture up in the left-hand corner sketched of him. I like that as well. And I especially like my mother and father at a New Year's Eve party that got a picture in the newspaper in Port Huron at the time. When I was very young, well, first of all, I was born in Chicago in 1946. And about 6 months later, we moved to Colchester, Ontario, which is on Lake Erie, just south of Windsor. Later, we moved to an apartment in Windsor and a house that my parents bought in South Windsor, and I'll show you some of the pictures of those. My father worked at a small manufacturing company that provided fishing equipment, rods and reels, and they had plants in Windsor and Detroit, and my mother stayed at home and helped raise the family. One of the questions that I've got about myself, my life, is how did my values develop? As a young child, I found myself being very curious, independent, competitive, especially with my brother, optimistic, happy, and high achieving. And so I attribute that to the influence of my parents and grandparents and other family members that impacted me at a very early age, as opposed to developing these later on. So Colchester, Ontario, is south of Detroit. You can see it's on Lake Erie. Then we moved to Windsor, which is just across the river from Detroit. Later on, we lived up in Port Huron, which is at the end of Lake Huron, at the top of the screen. And then later on, I spent a lot of time in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with the University of Michigan being right there. So this is me at an early age. I look like I was pretty happy, I guess. And I think this may have been one of the first introductions that I had to dogs, as you can see, and I'm being competitive with my brother down in the right-hand corner pulling his hair. So here are other pictures. Again, I think I was pretty happy at that point. And then finally, my grandmother on the Milburn side, my mother's side, she was part of our life oftentimes. Later on, when I became a little bit older, these were days of cowboys and Indians in coonskin caps. And you'll see that from the picture. And one day, I don't know exactly how, but an arrow ended up stuck in my cheek as a part of that process of bow and arrows. So I had this stuck in my cheek on this side, and I still have a scar from that. And my sister, who was 3 years younger, was sort of running behind me as I ran home. And I presented myself to my mother with this arrow in my cheek like this. And we went to the doctor, and the doctor wasn't, he thought that was not a good idea. So that's a memory that I have that I can't seem to get rid of. My Aunt Dolores, as I mentioned, and Judy became part of our lives, my cousin Judy especially, but my brother Robert, we always called him Robert, even though he transitioned to Bob with his friends. They locked me in the closet one day, and they were playing tricks on me. So I went to sleep, and they were very concerned because I never came out for a while. But they also taught me to ride a bike, but they took my allowance in exchange for that. Not part of the deal from my perspective, but that's what happened. And again, dogs and cats were part of the family early on. And the last point here is that my first day at kindergarten, I went to kindergarten, and I was taken there by a woman, Evelyn Shepard, who I'll introduce to you in a little while. I called her Shep because I really couldn't say the full name at the time when she first came to live with us. She was like a second mother. But there was a storm that day at kindergarten, and I ended up, they dismissed everybody, and Shep didn't know that to pick me up early, and so I walked home, and the storm was coming, and by the time I got home, it was starting to rain pretty hard. So I was faced with the question of early problem solving, and I decided I was going to break the basement window and open it up and crawl into the basement. I figured, well, I'm not going to get into trouble because I really needed to do that, and that's what happened. So here we are with the Cowboys and Indians, and some Christmas activity. One of our early dogs, Laddie, and then later on, the coonskin cap, and down in the bottom part, that's me on the left, my cousin Judy, and my brother. And then also in the background there is Tom Longley, who was Shep's father. So then I got to be a little bigger. In Windsor, I did the 3rd and 4th grade in the same year. And then we moved to Port Huron as I was going into the 5th grade. My parents at that time had bought a set of the World Book Encyclopedia, which I read all the time, just absorbed that. I was curious about how things work and what the world is all about, and I found that to be a very helpful source. I had a strong competition with my older brother, and that competition taught me how to beat my father at chess. So I always figured that I could do everything my brother did and do it better. When he went away to college, he went to the military academy initially. He spent 1 year there, but then he concluded that that wasn't quite for him, so he left and went to the University of Michigan. So this is one of our dogs again. We had a couple of different collies. This is Kim. You can also notice the television there. We got an early black and white television, and so I spent time, after school watching things on TV sometimes. Here I'm playing chess and beating my father. The lower right, this is my brother, Robert, as I call him, at West Point. We went to visit him at the Thanksgiving time period. So then I moved on to high school. Port Huron is a water town. It's on Lake Huron, has the St. Clair River, the Black River, and a canal that connects the lake with Black River to improve the water and make it not quite so black. I was very involved in YMCA programs, including swimming, water safety, life saving, and gymnastics. Paddleball. Paddleball, the experience has served me well because I've transitioned to pickleball and enjoy that here at Oak Hammock 3 times a week. I maintained an A average and was a member of the National Honor Society. I was on the Port Huron High swim team, and I got involved with student government and civic affairs as a major part of my life at that point. At the senior prom, though, I was following a friend of mine who happened to, we were going to go to a restaurant across the river in Sarnia, Ontario. And it turned out he sort of got lost, and it was on kind of an expressway type road. And I unfortunately made the mistake of not watching him carefully enough as he turned around, and I ran into the back of his car. So later on, when my older son was getting his driver's license, I decided one piece of information he really needed to know was that he was going to run into the back of somebody shortly after he got his license. And he asked me, "How do you know that? Why do you think that?" And I said, "Well, I did it." And then he did it. So here's Port Huron, and you can see that picture up on the right. The Blue Water Bridge crosses over to Sarnia at that point, and the lake is there on the top portion. And the bottom picture shows the Black River as it flows into the St. Clair River. And one of the things that Black River was great about was water skiing, and I'll talk about that later. So here are some of the things from high school. As I mentioned, we had a cat. This was Snoopy and Kim. the Lighthouse was the newspaper for the Huron High School, Port Huron High School. In the Y, I got a couple of awards, and that was an important part of my life, as I mentioned. Lots of friends, and then I got involved in terms of supporting some of the village efforts to raise money for the schools, and even got a letter of commendation from the local banker. And here we've got some of the folks that were involved with the National Honor Society, my swim team, and then during my senior year, I was vice president of the senior class, or of the student government there. And here's the car that, after the crash that I had, not too bad, but bad enough. And we were called the Big Reds. That was our color, so our graduation robes were red. So in 1963, I took off to go to the University of Michigan as a freshman. I ultimately got a BA. Political science was my major, and I participated heavily in student government during the turbulent Vietnam War era, which was most interesting. I was a member of the Alpha Delta Phi fraternity and have continued to be involved in that organization in terms of some of their fundraising and other activities. After my sophomore year, I was fortunate enough to travel to Europe for the summer and spent about 25,000 miles going through Europe, which was a great experience. And it taught me a lot. For 1 month, I traveled with a couple of other people, a fellow who had bought a car, and we went to Germany, to Wolfsburg, to pick up the Beetle that he bought. But then later on, I traveled for 2 months on my own, which was a real lesson. I had a Eurail pass, and that was pretty interesting to explore the world. During university time, I was an ROTC student and got a commission as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army, but I was deferred from Army active duty to go to law school. And then I successfully sued the city clerk who would not let me vote, and I was very proud of doing that. And then finally, I want to mention this story, that I met my wife after dating Sue, her sorority sister roommate. And Sue and I had the same birthday, and so we always kind of concluded that we were star-crossed. And later on, at the end of, I was going into my senior year, my third year in law school, and my wife Carol was going into her first year of law school. So it was in August at that time, and so Sue, it turned out, was going into AmeriCorps and taking off, and so we ran into each other, all of us, at the major, it was called the Pretzel Bell. It was a bar that everybody went to drink when they were 21. And so Carol looked at me, and I looked at her. We never really met, but we talked on the phone extensively because I would call Sue, and but never had an opportunity to meet Carol. So we just kind of, the sparks flew. And we got married. This was in August that we connected at the Pretzel Bell, and we were married in May the following year. So this is me during the college period. Some of the pictures when I was traveling in Europe. Photo with my dad here. And some of the, that upper one in the upper left is, I think, somewhere in the Alps. But some of the information about student government at University of Michigan at the time. And that's Sue in the upper left and the center upper left. And then when I went away to ROTC camp, I think they took a picture of me. Some of the commencement information and commissioning as a second lieutenant in the Army, and my law degree. And then finally the information about the student voting. I felt that I was a resident of Ann Arbor, and the clerk did not think that I was, and so I sued them and won that case. My brother Bob, as a first child, he was photographed much more than me, so there's lots of pictures that I have of him, not quite as many as me. And as I mentioned before, even though he was 6 years older, I believed that I could do everything he could do and do it better. That drove him crazy. And as I mentioned before, he went to West Point for a while, and then he went to University of Michigan, both for his BA and law school. I feel like I'm following in his footsteps to some extent. He went through ROTC as well, and then spent many years in the Army on active duty as a JAG officer. He currently lives in the Lansing, Michigan area now. So here are all the loving pictures with my parents holding him as the firstborn, and my grandparents as well. My aunt was involved as well. Picture on the lower right is when he was a plebe at the military academy. And here's the car again, this time looking a little better after it got fixed. So then my sister Carol, she was born 2 months premature. She was 3 years younger than I was. And she was supposed to have been born at Halloween. I'm sorry, she was supposed to be born at Christmas and actually was born around Halloween. And as a result, my parents hadn't figured out a name for her. And I'm not sure they even knew that it was going to be a girl or not. But they had these arguments about, because my father wanted to name her after his mother, Althea, and my mother wanted Philomena. And fortunately, they decided not to do that, and they left it to me and to my brother. My brother decided that she was supposed to be a Christmas carol, and that's how she got the carol part. And I liked the name Suzanne, and that's how she got named. I was kind of mean to her when she was young, but we became very close later on when she was at the University of Michigan, and then later on when she had children, because our kids got together and were very closely connected. She was involved in student government as well at the University of Michigan, and she's the only person that got more votes for student government than I did. So I felt pretty good about that. Our children grew up together. Unfortunately, she passed away at age 69 of metastatic breast cancer. So here's Carol at younger age. She was a dancer, and she had a nice smile. Family memories. There are photographs here of us as a family as opposed to me individually. We grew up mostly in Windsor, Ontario, and Port Huron, Michigan. I was fortunate. I was kind of a free-range kid. I played in the woods and the fields near our Windsor home in particular. I explored things, and I was very thankful to be able to do that. And as I mentioned before, Evelyn Shepard came to live with us. At the time, my sister was born prematurely. My father was traveling about quite a bit and wanted someone to help my mother take care of us. And so Shep had been a babysitter for us, but my father asked her to come live with us, and so she became a second mother. And I named her Shep because I couldn't say Evelyn Shepard. Her sister Maudie and her father Tom Logley, who I showed you a picture earlier on, were in Windsor, and they were regulars to us as well. And we frequently, as I mentioned before, saw the Milburns, including my cousin. So that's our house in South Windsor on the lower left. Car's a little bit older at that stage. Here are the Cowboys and Indians down on the lower left with my father and my younger sister. That's me over on the right-hand side, and our cousin Judy. House on the lower right is the one where we moved into in Port Huron. And that's my elementary school, McKinley Elementary School, that was built not too long before we moved there. dogs and cats, and another picture with my brother at West Point. And a few more. And then on the bottom portion, this is a little later on. There's pictures of Carol in here. I snuck these in. And my father, after my mother passed away, and later on as he was getting older and somewhat feeble. Shep and Maudie, they attended my wedding. Sister Carol and her husband named their daughter after Evelyn Shepard. And my sister's family regularly visited Shep and Maudie in Windsor later in life. So this is Shep on the upper left. The middle picture on the top, she's holding my sister as a baby. And the one on the bottom, the person on the left is Maudie, her sister. So in 1970, Carol and I were married in a garden wedding at the University of Michigan Law School in an inner courtyard. We decided that we wanted a garden wedding, and we concluded that was the best place to do it. I don't know that anybody had ever gotten married there before, and I was involved with the law school, student government, managed to talk my way into using the law school as the wedding site on it happened to be Memorial Day at that time. My cousin Judy, her husband, he was the one who married us. He was a Lutheran minister. He performed the ceremony. And one of the things that I remember so clearly is that it was an overcast day and cloudy, but the clouds broke and the sun streamed down on us when he pronounced us man and wife. That just gave me chills at the time. I had just received my JD, and Carol had just completed her first year of law school at that time. So here's the law school. That's the law quadrangle, and that's a view of the from the inner courtyard, looking up at some of the other parts. It's a beautiful law school. We had a string quartet, and no chairs. Everyone stood. That made sure that the ceremony was brief. There's there's Gene, Judy's husband, and Carol and I just after the ceremony and then at the reception. She was a very beautiful woman and remains a very beautiful woman. Dogs galore. We had many cats and dogs when I was a child. Later on, Carol and I had 14 dogs, usually 2 at a time. That way they could entertain each other. Pooh Bear, our first dog, was one that my sister bought and got for us. And I remember Pooh Bear was so tiny, she would fit inside our shoe. But she was the best dog ever. Woozy, on the other hand, was a Dalmatian, and she was infamous for being somewhat destructive. She would try to escape from wherever she was and chewed up a door and chewed up a room and so forth. But she was very sweet and soft, so she was kind of Jekyll and Hyde. Sophie, who was our first black lab, she was supposed to be a leader dog for the blind that we fostered. And we had to say goodbye to her at the end of the year in that fostering. And so we could keep track of her. We could talk and find out how she was doing in her leader dog for the blind classes. And then one day we got a call that said she had a career change, which meant that she did not quite make it all the way through. She was too easily distracted by kids and animals. And as a result, she became our pet until she passed away at age 12. Cora, our second black lab, was a trained therapy dog. Carol and I worked very much with her. She was a dog that had been a rescue dog, and she'd been picked up. She had 7 puppies in her. and she couldn't run away, so she got caught. She was at Nogales, border town in Arizona. Not sure whether she was on the Mexican side or the American side. Anyway, she was a very special dog. And then finally, Axel, a long-haired shepherd, was very intelligent and almost seemed human, and frustrated that we couldn't understand him when he would talk to us. This is Pooh Bear down in the lower left-hand corner on the right side, and the Dalmatian Woozy. Some more Woozy, Woozy and me. That's Axel on the lower left. The dogs love to swim in the lakes. We spent time in the Upper Peninsula, and they had a great time. And as you can see, they all wanted the stick on the lower left. Sometimes they got pretty dirty, so I had to wash them on we had a shower on the outside of our cabin there. And the lower left is Cora with one of her 7 puppies. And that's Jackson and Dixie. Dixie we currently have. And the chocolate lab here is my son's, so they had a good time at the lake. So those were our dogs. Then I became a young dad. Our first son, Ben, he was born in Charlottesville, Virginia in 1975. But unfortunately, he was born with a severe diaphragmatic hernia. And he went full term, and as soon as he was delivered, it became apparent that he was under severe respiratory distress. And he had to have an operation immediately. They transferred him over to the University Hospital. We were in another hospital at the time. And fortunately, there was a wonderful pediatric surgeon who took care of him and spent maybe 8 hours in operating on him and put in an artificial diaphragm. And afterwards, I talked to this surgeon, Dr. Shaw, and I asked him, this was right after he came out and let me know what had happened and that our son was still alive. And I asked him what were his odds and that he would survive. And the doctor said 50-50. Later on, I had a discussion with him, and he said, well, that wasn't quite right. This was after he was set to be released from the hospital 3.5 months later from newborn intensive care. And he said it was more like 90-10, maybe 10% chance of survival. Now he's a big strapping guy, has 2 sons, he's 49 years old. Our second son was born with no problems. And Ben had to have a second operation when he was 1.5 years old, and then he had to have a kind of retraining to figure out how to eat, because the second operation was due to the fact that his esophagus was open, and so the stomach acids were coming up. And but that was a trying experience, and it's something that really shaped us in our marriage and in our family life, and we're so grateful that he made it through that process. So here are some of the pictures. This is our house in Ann Arbor, Michigan. On the upper left, that's Ben as a newborn. That's Dad holding Ben later on. And then as the two were young boys, Ben's on the left and Sam's on the right, and the Dalmatian Woozy is in the middle. So boats. Water was a really important part of our lives. We lived in a water town, and one day my father came home with a wooden boat that was transportation for me all around Port Huron. This was before I got my driver's license, but I could, during the summertime, travel around on the boat. And then later on, after Carol and I got married, our first major purchase was a 15-foot fiberglass red ski boat. So we were both of the mind that boats were important. And we now have a fleet up at our cabin in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that includes a ski boat, a jet ski, a sailboat, 3 paddle boards, a canoe, 2 kayaks, and 2 small fishing boats. So here's my early boat that my father bought. It was a Chris Craft Barracuda. We put fiberglass on the outside of it. One day I was riding with some friends in that we were skiing way, way up Black River where we really shouldn't have gone. It got narrow and a little more shallow. And I punched a hole in the side of it, or the bottom of it. And so all of us kind of rode on one side to keep that part out of the water. And my father came and we took it out of the water and then got it fixed. But that was one of the learning experiences. The lower right, that's Port Huron downtown, where the river comes out. This is the Port Huron to Mackinac sailboat race in the upper left. We used to go out there in the summertime and watch them start that in the middle of July. That's a Hopi Cat 16 that I sailed on a lot. And our our second ski boat up at the cabin. And in the middle picture on the bottom, if you look at that closely, there are 2 people and 1 dog. Sophie was a water dog that learned how to sail and knew exactly what to do when we would come about. And I loved the fact that she was such a good water dog. Lower left, that's me with one of the grandkids zooming around. And then on Lake Superior, we took the boat out there on occasion. And another grandson in the jet ski. And one of the paddle boards and one of the kayaks in the lower right. So the cabin, as we called it. This was a wonderful place that was built. The cabin itself was built in the mid-50s at the direction of Carol's aunts and uncle. They were school teachers in Chicago, and her uncle worked for the IRS, I think it was. It's located in Autrain, Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula between Marquette and Munising, on a 900-acre lake just off of Lake Superior. Great for water skiing and just exploring and seeing the birds in the area, which is a favorite activity. We've been going there every year since 1972. And our kids and grandkids are bonded to this cabin, and they go every year, usually for 2 or 3 weeks. And our dog's ashes, or remains of the ones that have passed away, are buried there. So here's the cabin. On the upper left, that's the Mackinac Bridge that goes from the lower peninsula of Michigan up to the upper peninsula. We normally would have to cross that bridge to get there. And as you can see, the bunk room for the grandkids is decorated a little bit with Michigan paraphernalia. The lower left and the upper right, those are signs that we have where we have our dog's remains. And the one on the left, the lower left, says, "If there are no dogs in heaven, then when I die, I want to go where they went." So that's a favorite of mine that I look at once in a while. Lots of birds. One of the things we would normally do is go out and see if we find the loons, find the eagles, and the hummingbirds are right out front. And the grandsons, they figured out how to build their own flying machines. That's an X-Wing fighter from Star Wars with Legos. They also have, there's an airport up there that used to be the Air Force Base, and they have a number of planes on display that we go check out once in a while. Nice waterfalls, nice golf course. This is Lake Superior in the upper left. The right-hand side, 4th of July, there's a resort across the lake from us, and they always have a big fireworks display. Lower left is one of the Pictured Rocks excursion boats, and the pie there is one that my wife baked. She's famous in terms of wonderful pies that the grandsons demand every time. Diving. This was another activity of our family. When I was younger, I had an opportunity to get diving equipment when I was in high school, and some of my friends also did, and we joined the local dive club. But I stopped diving when I was in college. But later on, we saw an ad for a dive training class when our kids were young teenagers, essentially. And we all decided we were going to go get certified to go scuba diving. And we were scheduled to go on a Hawaii winter vacation. So we did that. We went to the local junior high school pool and managed to get certified, and had to go to Hawaii to get open water certified. Over the years, Carol has done many more dives than I have. I think she's done 1,700. I've done maybe 200 or 300. So she's the experienced diver in the family. Some of our most special dives have been in the Galapagos, Indonesia, and the Solomon Islands. So here I am in high school. This was for an article that was done in the local paper at the YMCA. That's one of my, a couple of my friends there from high school. And then out on the river, you can see the article there in the middle. The upper right, that's Carol and me. I think this was taken in Indonesia. Oftentimes we would go diving later on with a dive boat. And these are dive boat excursions where you live on the dive boat and you dive 2 or 3 times a day, maybe 4. The boat in the upper left and the upper right, these are pictures from the Solomon Islands. And as we were coming in, the local people there, put on a show for us. And here are some of the kids. And it's interesting that the photograph there in the middle, upper portion, has evidence of the fact that during the war, there were American soldiers, sailors, that had blonde hair. And they ended up on some of the kids that are there today. Some of the big stuff, wonderful opportunity for clear water diving, and then some of the little fish as well, and a turtle. So another activity, water skiing. Port Huron, that's a water town, and the Black River was a great place to water ski. I had many friends in high school that also had boats. So that was something that was really enjoyed. Gas was cheap, and I learned how to ski on a paddle. This is me skiing on a paddle, and later on skiing at the Upper Peninsula a few years ago. My younger son, Sam, on the lower left, is a great water skier. His brother's probably even better. Sailing. In the summer, we would go to University of Michigan's Camp Michigania on one of the lakes, and we went to Sailing Week. So I developed a like for sailing, and at one point my dream was to have a boat and to sail around the world and retire on a boat. But that never really worked because I had a tendency to get seasick. But ultimately we bought a large catamaran sailboat, which we chartered in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Unfortunately, it didn't pay for itself, so we sold it. But we had a great time sailing all around the Virgin Islands in the meantime. So this is Kathmandu. My sister came along on some of our trips. That's her on the right-hand side. Then when I got older, after the Army Transportation Corps Basic Officers Training at Fort Eustis, Virginia, after I got married, I spent 6 years in the Army Reserve. One time, in 1973, the reserves took me to Washington, D.C., where I had an opportunity to watch the Watergate hearings, because the unit that we were supposed to go to only had capacity for about a third of the people that we had. So they let us go, and we were there at a time when we were not wearing uniforms, and people had golf carts or golf clubs and tennis rackets. My wife, when she dropped us off at the airport, dropped me off at the airport, noticed that and thought, wait a minute, this doesn't look like an Army outing. My professional career, over many years, I was involved primarily in legal information and healthcare information. And then after moving to Okamic in 2023, unfortunately, I was diagnosed with colon cancer, but I've been treated very well by the UF Health folks, and doctors there have been helpful to make me healthy again. One of the things I did that I really remember was the first World Congress on Product Liability. The company that I was with, we decided to sponsor that, and I was the MC at that session. I remember it was in London, and they had simultaneous translation for 4 languages: English, French, German, and Spanish. And so that was a memorable time. That was right at the time of the Carter inauguration. So up at the cabin, sometimes I would jump off the bridge. The grandkids and kids would do that as well. There was a small river there that the lake would go into, and that was a lot of fun. And the lower right-hand side, these are some of my colleagues from my healthcare information time. We went to Fenway Park in Boston during a conference, and the guy on the right, Marty, managed to get us into the park with contacts that he had there, and we were on the field. That's what the middle section is our feet on the field at the Boston Park. The upper middle section, that was an award that I got or acknowledgement of some of the contributions that I made. Spent some time there, as I mentioned, at the Cancer Pavilion down the street here. Went out to the retired horses. And then some of the time here at Okamic in our apartment and riding bikes. Arizona. After I retired, we moved to Arizona. We'd gone there during the gray winters in Michigan, and we spent a month or 2 there. But we decided we would abandon the cold and gray of Michigan and move there for retirement. So we were on a golf course on the 18th tee. Tucson is a great cycling town too, so we had fun with that. But they've got rattlesnakes there, and a bunch of them rattled at me. Fortunately, nobody struck. And even the dogs had to be trained to avoid snakes. Still have my Michigan apparel on there in Arizona. This is the backyard on the lower right, looking at some of the hills there. Once in a while, some snow, and certainly some snakes. The middle picture at the bottom there is the front of our house. Once in a while, we get thunderstorms with nice rainbows, and the lower left is some of the interior of the house. So, as I mentioned before, travel has always been an important part of our experience. We've traveled all over the U.S., seen all 50 states. Both Carol and I have done that, and we've traveled internationally as well. One of the things that we did that was really interesting, we spent time stopping at presidential libraries, and we also visited a number of the national parks. And I got pictures here of Custer's home, which was quite interesting. The lower left, that's FDR's presidential library area. Upper right, that's Sault Ste. Marie locks. One of the bison at Teddy Roosevelt Park, National Park. And then here we've got Custer's home, where he left from to go to Custer's last stand. And the picture there on the lower right, the middle picture on the lower portion, that's Eisenhower's statue at his presidential library. One of the times we were going cross country, I think it was actually coming here, we happened to stay at a place where they were having a touring of Packer automobiles. And the lower right, that's Duke Chapel in Durham. I like the picture in the middle here. This particular Fat Dog's restaurant has the label of "You are nowhere." And it really is out in the middle of nowhere. And then we got a couple of pictures with Key West. We also traveled to Italy. My sister Carol and her husband Bruce loved Italy and went there every year. And Bruce speaks Italian, and my sister was very good at planning excursions. So they would rent a villa, and we would do day trips, and we tagged along many times with them. This is a view on the upper left of the town where the villa was. That was looking down from the villa area. Lots of churches. Town hall. And many festivals. The lower right was one of the festivals that we went to. Mexico. We traveled to Mexico many times. One of the most special trips was to the Baja on a Lindblad National Geographic cruise where we were able to touch the whales, the gray whales. This is just an amazing experience. These gray whales, even though some time ago they were hunted almost to extinction, they breed and they give birth to their calves in lagoons. And so the mothers, for some reason, have decided to show off their calves to humans. And we would go on zodiacs and approach them, and the whales would push their babies up, and we would have a chance to actually touch them. Lower right there, you can see one of the whales. And the middle bottom portion, that's a whale that's being petted or touched. Here's a baby whale at the front of the boat. Lots of marine mammals as well on that trip. Sea lions, different kinds of whales and dolphins. So that's an overview of my life. It's been wonderful. My conclusions, I learned that family ties are most important, both when life is joyous and when it's challenging. I have to thank my parents for giving me many opportunities that they did not have, especially in terms of a good education and opportunities for independence, exploration, and fun when I was young. And I'm especially thankful to have a loving wife, 2 sons, 4 grandsons, 2 wonderful daughters-in-law, and many dogs. And yes, a water-loving Wolverine can become a Gator, but only when they're not playing each other.
Well, thank you, Neill. You sure have been around. And I love the old photos of the birthday parties and the cowboys and Indians. I think we can relate. So, anyone have questions? Neill is here live to answer.
Hello, everyone.
And while some questions might come up, I'd like to ask, when you went to the doctor with an arrow in your cheek, how did he address that? What did he do for you?
Well, he stitched me up. And I actually, I got to the doctor with the arrow still like this. And it needed to stop the bleeding and disinfect it and so forth. I, I, I think I blocked that out, but I probably shot it up in the air and it came down and hit me. But I don't remember exactly.
Oh,
I do
God.
remember running home, and I remember my mother's reaction, which was somewhat horrified, but she got things under control on her own emotions. So it's certainly an event I remember, but not with great clarity on all the details.
Wow.
I was probably 6 or 7.
Neill, it's Pat. And one thing you forgot to mention is you're a pretty dangerous pickleball player, a good player and a good teacher.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's because I started playing uh, paddleball back in high school, maybe before then, and racket sports I've been doing pretty much all my life.
All right, Neill, thank you very much for sharing your life from start to finish.
It was fun to do. Like I said, digging through my memory box that my mother put together and that I added stuff to. It was a challenge, but it was fun.
Thanks. And next week, we'll see Mary Christman talk about all of her adventures. So have a good week.
Bye, everyone.